Some sounds are not meant to be heard. Some frequencies are not meant to be found. In 2019, in a quiet coastal town of Greyhaven, Maine, a strange radio signal began appearing for only 4 minutes every night. No warnings, no patterns, no explanation. The people who heard it believed it was interference, until the voices started calling their names. What you're about to hear is a true story, told quietly at first, but it doesn't stay quiet for long. Because once you recognize the voice on the other side of the static, you can never unhear it. I never believed in ghosts. I believed in signals, data, and measurable things. My name is Elliot Varnell. I'm 34 years old, male, and in 2019 I was living alone in a rented house just outside Greyhaven, Maine. The area was mostly forests, old fishing roads, and one large cemetery that locals avoided after dark. I was a ham radio enthusiast, not professionally, just a habit I picked up after leaving my job in telecommunications. Late nights were quiet. Radio waves kept me company. It started on October 17th, 2019, at exactly 2 a.m. That's when I noticed the hum. At first, it sounded like background interference, low, uneven, almost breathing. But the thing that bothered me was its timing. It appeared suddenly and vanished at 2:04 a.m. every night, like a switch being flipped somewhere far away. I marked the frequency, 88.13 megahertz. No station matched it. No licensed transmission existed there. On the third night, the hum changed. Something layered itself beneath the static. Whispers. Not words yet. Just breathy, broken sounds, like someone trying to speak through soil. I leaned closer to the receiver, adjusting the gain, telling myself it was just auditory pareidolia, the brain inventing patterns. I'd explained that to others before. Then the whisper said my name. Elliot. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. But it was unmistakably directed at me. I ripped the headphones off and sat there in the dark, heart pounding, staring at the radio like it had moved on its own. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I searched local forums. One post caught my attention. User, night antenna. Anyone else hearing something weird between 2 o'clock and 2:04 a.m. on 88.13? Thought I heard my mother's voice. More replies followed. Different people. Same time window. Same frequency. One man claimed he heard his brother, who had drowned 6 years earlier. Another swore the voice asked him to listen closer. That's when I realized this wasn't random. It was localized. Everyone reporting it lived within a 3-mile radius of Old Willow Cemetery. I drove there that evening before sunset. The cemetery was older than Greyhaven itself. Uneven ground, leaning headstones, and sections that had sunk into the earth over decades. Locals said the soil there was alive, always shifting. At 1:58 a.m., I returned, radio in hand. The air felt wrong, too still. At 2 a.m., the hum began again. This time, the whisper wasn't faint. It was closer, clearer, and it wasn't just my name anymore. It was a sentence. I didn't tell anyone what I heard that night. Not immediately. Instead, I kept listening. Every night. Same time. Same 4 minutes. The whispers were no longer random. They followed patterns. On the 5th night, I brought a notebook and began writing down every sound that resembled a word. Some were incomplete. Some overlapped. But one phrase repeated more than the others. Closer. Listen closer. The voice didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. Strained. That scared me more. By the end of the week, the online forum had grown restless. More listeners joined. More names were called. One user disappeared entirely. His last message read, "I think it's my wife. She sounds cold." That post was timestamped 2:03 a.m. After that, nothing. That's when Dr. Calder Rowan contacted me. He wasn't a ghost hunter or a YouTube investigator. He was a paranormal acoustics researcher, mid-40s, British accent softened by years in the States. His work focused on resonant frequencies and environmental memory, the idea that places could store emotional trauma like recordings. He asked to meet in person. We met at a closed diner near the highway. Neon lights buzzing, windows fogged. Calder listened quietly as I played a recording from the cemetery. He didn't interrupt, didn't blink. When it ended, he said something I wasn't ready to hear. "This isn't a broadcast," he said. "It's a feedback loop." He explained that certain soil compositions, especially dense clay mixed with decaying organic matter, could amplify subsonic vibrations. Old cemeteries were perfect for it. "What you're hearing," he said, lowering his voice, "might be voices being reflected, not transmitted." "Reflected from where?" I asked. Calder slid a printed chart across the table. "Frequency analysis." The waveform matched something known as corpse resonance, a controversial theory suggesting that decomposing bodies emit faint vibrational patterns for years. "Normally," he said, "they're harmless. Background noise. But if something synchronizes them." I asked what could do that. He looked at me for a long time before answering. "Attention," he said. "That night, we went to the cemetery together. Calder brought professional equipment, ground microphones, spectrum scanners, and a reinforced receiver tuned specifically to 88.13 megahertz. At 1:59 a.m., the ground was silent. At 2 o'clock, it breathed. The hum rose slowly, like a distant engine starting underground. The radio crackled. Then the voices came. Dozens of them, layered, overlapping. Calder's face went pale. "They're not speaking randomly," he whispered. "They're responding." I asked, responding to what? Before he could answer, the radio cut through with a single, clear voice. Not my mother, not my father, my own voice, speaking words I had never said. "Elliot, come closer." The ground beneath our feet vibrated softly, not enough to shake dirt loose, just enough to feel alive. Calder dropped his headphones. "It's mapping you," he said. "Your voice, your memories. It's learning." The scanner began spiking. Readings surged far beyond normal electromagnetic levels. Then something new happened. For the first time since I'd found the frequency, the transmission didn't end at 2:04 a.m. It kept going. And from somewhere below the earth, the whispers spoke together, slowly forming a sentence we both understood. "We remember the way down." After that night, Calder didn't go home. Neither did I. We sat in my living room with the radio equipment spread across the floor, curtains closed, lights dimmed. Neither of us spoke much. It felt like if we said the wrong thing out loud, something would answer. Calder replayed the recordings again and again. He isolated the low-end frequencies, the ones most people never consciously hear. "That's where they're anchored," he said. "Below speech, below intention." He overlaid the audio with geological maps of Greyhaven. The results made my stomach tighten. The signal source wasn't above ground. It wasn't even level. It came from 9 to 11 feet below the cemetery, directly beneath the oldest burial plots, graves from the late 1800s, many unmarked, many stacked. "Mass burial soil," Calder said quietly. "Compacted grief." He told me something he hadn't mentioned before. Old Willow Cemetery had a history the town rarely discussed. In 1891, a coastal fever tore through Greyhaven. The dead outnumbered the living within weeks. Bodies were buried quickly, sometimes without coffins, sometimes without names. And some of them, Calder said, weren't dead yet. That night, the frequency returned earlier. 1:57 a.m. The hum was stronger, more confident. Calder warned me not to respond. Not verbally, not mentally. They adapt to attention, he said. Any acknowledgement strengthens coherence. But it was hard not to listen when the voices knew so much. They spoke in fragments now, full sentences broken by static. They described the cold, the weight, the pressure on the chest. Then they described memories that weren't theirs. My childhood bedroom, the smell of my grandmother's perfume, the sound of my father coughing in the hospital before he died. I never told Calder about that. The radio crackled sharply, and one voice came through clearer than all the others. It wasn't mine. It was Calder's. He froze, didn't move. The voice copied his accent perfectly, his rhythm. Calder, it said softly. You left us listening. His hand shook as he shut off the receiver. The silence afterward felt unnatural, like something holding its breath. Calder finally spoke. They're not just echoes, he said. They're impressions of people who were never finished dying. He explained his theory. When the fever victims were buried alive, panic and oxygen deprivation triggered extreme neural firing. Those signals, trapped and repeated through decay and soil resonance, formed loops. Loops that didn't know they were over. And now, he said, looking at the radio, they want resolution. At 2:02 a.m., the radio turned itself back on. We both jumped. No static this time. No hum. Just words. Permission to continue. Calder whispered, "Do not answer." But the ground outside began to shift. Not violently. Subtly. Footprints appeared in the dew beyond the window, leading away from the cemetery, toward my house. The voice returned, dozens speaking as one. We know the way up. We remember the way down. We need the middle. Calder looked at me then. Really looked at me. You hear them clearer than I do, he said. That means they've chosen you as the anchor. I asked him what happens if we ignore them. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was barely there. They'll find someone who doesn't. And in that moment, my radio display changed. A new message appeared where the frequency number should have been. Enter depth. Calder stared at the radio display like it was a living thing. Neither of us touched it. The words enter depth pulsed softly, as if waiting for input. That's not a prompt, Calder said. It's an invitation. I asked him what would happen if we destroyed the equipment. Smashed it. Burned it. He shook his head slowly. The radio isn't the source, he said. It's just how you're hearing them. Outside, the footprints in the dew had stopped at my porch. They didn't lead back. At 2:03 a.m., the hum returned, not through the radio, but through the walls. Low, vibrational. My chest tightened, like pressure building from the inside. Calder made a decision I hadn't expected. We need to go down there, he said, before they figure out how to come up on their own. We returned to Old Willow Cemetery just before midnight. Fog rolled low across the ground, thick enough to hide the bases of the headstones. The place smelled of damp earth and iron. Calder carried a ground probe and a modified receiver strapped to his chest. I carried the radio. It felt heavier than before. The oldest section of the cemetery sloped downward. Graves pressed close together, some marked only by numbers etched into stone. Calder stopped near a sunken plot. The earth collapsed inward like a shallow bowl. This is it, he said. He drove the probe into the soil. The response was immediate. The radio burst to life. Voices surged through it. Louder, clearer, desperate. Not screaming, begging. We're still here. We never left. Please don't stop listening. The ground beneath the probe trembled. Dirt shifted inward, folding like something breathing below. Calder checked his readings. His face drained of color. The depth is changing, he said. It's getting closer. I asked closer to what? To the surface. At exactly 2:04 a.m., the cemetery lights flickered on. They had been dead for years. The radio cut to a single voice. Not many. One. It sounded young, barely adult. I couldn't move, the voice said. They said it would be quick. The soil near the sunken grave cracked. Not enough to open. Enough to split. A hand-shaped imprint pressed upward from below. Defined. Slow. Calder grabbed my arm. This is the breach point, he said. If it completes, they won't need us anymore. The radio display flashed again. Confirmed depth. 10 feet. Calder's voice shook as he spoke. They're asking how far they are from us, he said. If you answer. I won't, I said. But the radio responded anyway. Because I hadn't answered out loud. I had thought it. The display changed. Confirmation received. The ground split wider. Cold air rushed upward, carrying the smell of rot and wet stone. From beneath the opening, a whisper rose. Clear, steady, final. We can hear you breathing. Calder pulled me back as the soil collapsed inward, sealing the breach as suddenly as it had opened. The lights died. The radio went silent. For the first time since this began, nothing happened at 2:04 a.m. No hum. No whispers. Calder looked at me, fear fully unmasked. "They don't need the frequency anymore," he said. "They've learned the distance." As we walked away, my radio crackled softly one last time. Not a voice, just a sound, like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. From below the ground. Calder left Greyhaven the next morning. No goodbye, no explanation to the authorities. He mailed me a single envelope 2 weeks later. Inside was a note and a flash drive. The note had only one sentence: "Never listen alone again." I stopped using the radio, packed it away in a locked case, buried under blankets in the basement. I told myself the silence meant it was over. For a while it was. Then the town changed. People started waking up at night for no reason. Dogs refused to go near Old Willow Cemetery. And the soil began to sink, slowly, evenly, across the oldest section of graves. No one called it collapse. They called it settling. On March 3rd, 2020, a construction crew found something strange beneath a nearby road. Not bones, not coffins, empty spaces, perfectly shaped voids in the soil, as if something had been carefully removed. That night, at 2 a.m., I heard the hum again. Not from the radio, from the floorboards beneath my bed. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound passed through the house like a wave and faded at 2:04 a.m., exactly on time. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a notification. An unfamiliar app icon sat on my screen. No name, no description. When I opened it, there was only one thing displayed: a frequency, 88.13 megahertz. Below it, a message blinked slowly. "Listening improves clarity." I deleted the app. It came back. I smashed the phone. The replacement downloaded it automatically. I haven't gone near the cemetery since. But sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps outside my house. Measured, careful, and just before 2:04 a.m., I always feel it. That pressure in my chest, like something underground, measuring how far away I am. If you're hearing this, if this story sounds familiar, you might already be on the same frequency. End of story. If this story unsettled you, you're not alone. Some stories don't end when the sound stops. They wait. If you've ever experienced strange voices, unexplained signals, or moments where technology felt too aware, share your experience in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. If you enjoyed this true horror story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who loves dark, paranormal stories or needs a warning. And remember, not every signal is meant to be answered.